She left it on the bathroom sink, folded, creased, and still warm from the printer. Not on the kitchen table. Not with a speech. Not even with a look. No, she placed our entire marriage, 16 years of it, next to my toothbrush. A divorce agreement, printed and signed, like a grocery list left out before work. And taped to it was a ribbon. Not red. Not silver. Birthday gold. I didn't even open it at first. I thought maybe it was a love note. Maybe a reservation confirmation for dinner. I hadn't imagined it could be the end of everything, printed in black ink, wrapped in celebration. She called it a gift. Your birthday's in 4 hours. Happy freedom, her message read, scribbled in permanent marker on the envelope. She was already gone. Car not in the driveway. Closet door open, half her clothes missing. She'd packed like a thief, quick, deliberate, surgical. I stood in the doorway with that paper in my hand, wearing a towel, still dripping from the shower, staring at the mirror. She'd taken my razor. My razor. Who takes someone's razor when they leave them? And then I noticed her phone. She left it charging, wide open. Face up. No lock screen. That's where I saw his name. Not once. Not twice. Hundreds of times. A thread so long it could have had its own postal code. Photos. Memes. Miss you texts at 3 a.m. shared playlists. Voice notes with giggling. Him calling her baby cake. And a message from her that read, once he gets the papers, we're finally out of the shadows. He won't make a scene. He never does. She really thought I wouldn't do anything. That I'd roll over and sign it with a grateful smile. But here's the thing. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. I just stood there, clutching the paper, and whispered, wait till your lover sees. Because I'd already made a copy of the last photo she sent him. The one with the hotel bed. The one where she was wearing my shirt. The one I wore at our wedding rehearsal, while he was holding her waist like he owned it. She made a mistake. She forgot who handled all the insurance, the taxes, the tech, the files. She forgot who knew where the paper trail led. And if she thought a gold ribbon and a vanishing act were enough to erase me, she was about to learn what silence sounds like right before the world hears everything. I didn't go to work that day. I didn't even pretend to. I just sat at the kitchen counter, still in my towel, with her phone unlocked beside me, that stupid ribbon curling in the trash, and the divorce papers spread out like a cruel birthday banner. The more I read, the more it felt like a well-rehearsed exit plan. Everything was thought through, the financials, the division of property, even who got the dog, even though we never had one. That's when it hit me. This wasn't something she wrote overnight. She'd been planning it for months. Maybe longer. And him, Dustin, the name I now couldn't stop seeing, he was in every corner of it. Texts from late nights when I thought she was working late. Emails forwarded from her work account to her private one. Receipts for hotels and cities she told me she never visited. A photo of a necklace I never saw on her but paid for anyway, billed on our joint card, labeled vendor hospitality expense. But I didn't react like the man she described in those messages. You know, Owen won't even notice, or he'll probably blame himself. No. I started copying. I transferred everything from her phone to my laptop, messages, pictures, call logs, cloud backups. I found an old flash drive shaped like a plastic giraffe from some conference years ago and dumped it all on there. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I felt better just having it. Like I was holding proof that I wasn't crazy. The sad part? I still didn't hate her. That sounds pathetic, right? But in between the waves of anger, I kept wondering what I did wrong. Where I lost her. Was it when I started working overtime to pay off her brother's medical debt? Was it when I got sick 2 winters ago and couldn't go with her to her yoga retreat? Was it just me? Too predictable? Too boring? I opened our wedding album out of pure desperation. It was still on the top shelf of the closet. I don't think she even touched it. There was this one photo where she had her arms around my neck, laughing, head tilted, her veil caught in the breeze. And I just stared at it and thought, what the hell happened to that girl? Then the doorbell rang. I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was a delivery guy, brown uniform, holding a small gift bag and a card. I signed for it like a robot. He was already halfway down the driveway when I opened it. Inside the bag was a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses, and on the card, handwritten in her looping cursive, were the words, "Here's to a clean break. You'll thank me later." I just sat on the floor and laughed. The champagne was warm, the glasses were cheap, and the note was soaked in the kind of cruelty that only someone who truly didn't care anymore could write. But the moment that truly snapped me out of it came not long after. Her email pinged on her phone. I wasn't even snooping at this point. It was still open. The message was from Dustin. Subject line: can't wait for him to be out of the picture. The message itself? One line: did you give him the papers? Hope he didn't cry, lol. No punctuation. No compassion. Just that smug, digital laughter. So I responded. Yeah. I replied to her lover using her account. It wasn't rage. It wasn't vengeance. I typed slowly, precisely, every word dripping with quiet rage. Not yet. He's still smiling. I think he's planning something. Should I be worried? And then I pressed send. A few seconds later, those 3 dots popped up. Dustin was typing. Then they disappeared. Then came back. Then disappeared again. Finally, a reply came through. Wait, who is this? I didn't answer. I just smiled. Let them wonder. Let them sweat. I may not be the guy who throws chairs or drives to a hotel to scream in a parking lot, but I am the guy who notices patterns, saves receipts, and tracks metadata. And I just became the biggest variable in their little fantasy. Because if they thought divorce papers wrapped like a birthday present was the end, they haven't seen what it looks like when the harmless husband stays quiet and starts watching. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a minute. I just sat in the living room, with my laptop open and that giraffe flash drive glowing faintly in the dark, and I kept reading through everything I'd copied. I couldn't stop myself. I read their entire relationship like it was a crime novel I couldn't put down. Except every twist was another punch to the gut, and I was the idiot detective who didn't see it coming. She met Dustin at a co-working space she started using once she went fully remote. She said it helped her focus, helped her stay motivated. What it actually did was help her fall in love with a guy who drank kale smoothies, drove a leased Audi, and couldn't spell definitely correctly in a single one of his messages. At first, their chats were innocent, friendly. I get it. People connect. People flirt. But then it changed. Fast. In just a few weeks, they were sending each other hotel bookings, late-night selfies, inside jokes about the ghost of boring husbands, and every now and then, messages about me. Not about how she was going to tell me the truth. Not about how she felt guilty. But things like, I wore that stupid shirt he likes today, just to shut him up. He made me pancakes. It's kind of tragic, honestly. He still doesn't suspect. He's too emotionally lazy to even notice. Emotionally lazy. That one stuck in my throat. Because here's the thing. I know I'm not exciting. I'm the guy who reminds you about oil changes, checks if the door's locked 3 times, and can recite our Wi-Fi password in my sleep. I'm the one who always picks the same booth at the same diner and never forgets to bring an umbrella when it rains. That's me. But I never lied to her. Never made her feel small. Never mocked her behind her back. I was safe. I was boring. And apparently, that meant I deserved to be replaced. So the next day, I called out sick again. I told my boss I had food poisoning. He didn't ask questions. I don't think I said more than 10 words on that call. I was already halfway down a rabbit hole I didn't plan to stop digging. Because I didn't just want revenge, I wanted clarity. I needed to understand who I married. And more importantly, who she was now. I drove to the co-working space she used. I knew the address from a receipt she forwarded once when she claimed she accidentally paid for a coffee there with our shared card. It was a bright, modern building with 2 mini windows and a juice bar out front. I parked across the street and waited in my car. My stomach twisted every time someone walked out the door. And then, around 11:20 a.m., she appeared. Wearing that green sweater I'd bought her 3 Christmases ago. Smiling. Not fake smiling. Either. Full on, wrinkle in the eyes kind of happy. And walking beside her, way too close, was him. Dustin. Even from across the street, I could tell it was him. Tall, athletic in that CrossFit way, obnoxiously confident. They were laughing. He held the door open for her like they were on some high school date, and she touched his arm when she passed. Light, casual, like it was second nature. Then they walked to his car, not the Audi this time, but a rental, and drove off, together. I followed them. No, not like in the movies. No guns. No trench coat. Just me, in my aging Honda, following 2 people who thought I was curled up at home licking my wounds. I stayed 2 cars behind. Kept my distance. I was nervous, shaky, but focused. My palms were sweating so badly I wiped them on my jeans every few minutes just to keep my grip on the wheel. They drove to a cafe on the edge of town. Somewhere quiet. Trendy. One of those places with mismatched chairs and overpriced tea. They sat outside, ordered something, and he kissed her hand across the table. I took a photo. then another, and another. It wasn't even for legal reasons. It was for me. To remind myself that this was real, that I wasn't dreaming, that the woman who once told me I was her home was now sipping lavender chai while holding hands with the guy she called our future. I didn't confront them. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat in my car, heart bleeding quietly, and started uploading everything to a private drive. Every photo, every screenshot, every receipt. And then I started writing. Not a post, not a message. A letter. To her. To Dustin. To anyone who would listen. Because if they wanted a clean break, I was going to give them one. Clean. Sharp. Documented. And with timestamps. They thought I wouldn't do anything. That much was clear. In their eyes, I was just a man fading into the background, someone so mild and quiet he'd barely cause a ripple while drowning. But what they didn't realize was that silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's the sound of everything lining up, the pause before the blow. That night, Clarabelle texted me. I'd been expecting something, maybe even a fake apology, but it was colder than I could have imagined. She wrote, "I'll come by Sunday to pick up a few things. Please don't make this dramatic. Let's try to part with maturity." That word, maturity, made me want to slam my head against the wall. As if what she did, what she was doing, was in any way measured or adult. She blindsided me with divorce papers, left without a conversation, and vanished with a man I didn't even know existed until yesterday. But sure, maturity. She didn't even mention the fact that it was still my birthday, that I'd spend it alone, that the only gift I got was her betrayal printed out in ink and tied with a gold ribbon. Funny thing is, I had planned something for us. A reservation at Bellamy's. Her favorite restaurant, the one with the candlelit tables and the homemade ravioli she always said tasted like a vacation in a bowl. I even had a small gift for her in my dresser, a photo of us from our 3rd anniversary, reprinted and framed, along with a handwritten note saying I was ready to start fresh, to find our rhythm again, even if it meant changing everything. She'll never see it. Instead, she sat across from Dustin, drinking herbal tea, feeding him pieces of almond croissant with those same fingers she used to trace lazy circles on my arm every morning. And the worst part? It looked so easy for her. Like I had never been more than a placeholder until the real story began. So I started rewriting the story myself. The letter I'd started turned into a full timeline. Not an angry rant. No, that's too easy. It was a calm, detailed collection of everything I now knew. Dates, names, screenshots, financial statements, hotel invoices, photos with metadata. I had access to our shared calendar, and now that I was looking through a different lens, I realized how often she marked things like client retreat or board dinner when they lined up perfectly with the locations Dustin had texted her about. She was sloppy, but she didn't have to be careful because she thought I'd never look. I created a folder called Clean Break, Evidence, uploaded everything into it. I made 3 copies, one on a physical drive, one on the cloud, and one emailed to myself under a disguised subject line in an old account she didn't know I still had. I wasn't planning to use it publicly. Not yet. But it felt like a weapon I could hold close, even if I never fired it. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I booked a hotel room. Just for one night. Not because I wanted to run away, but because I needed to breathe somewhere that didn't reek of her shampoo. Somewhere I could exist without her shadow curled up on every piece of furniture. At check-in, the clerk asked if I was celebrating anything. I nearly laughed in his face. "Yeah," I said. "Sort of." He smiled like he understood, then handed me the keycard with a nod. The room was basic, nothing fancy. Just a view of the highway and clean sheets. I dropped my bag, pulled the curtains halfway, and sat on the bed with the lights off. I thought about all the things I didn't say to her. All the ways I'd made myself small to keep the peace. All the moments I ignored my gut just to avoid conflict. And then I realized something that chilled me straight to the core. She didn't just leave me for Dustin. She prepared to erase me, piece by piece. Softly, silently, until nothing I said would have mattered anymore. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to confront her when she came back on Sunday. I was going to let her walk right into something she didn't see coming. Because sometimes the best trap isn't loud or messy. It's quiet. It's surgical. It's the kind of trap you build with a calm voice, a folder full of truth, and a man she never really thought she had to fear. Sunday came with gray clouds. The kind that don't cry, just hover. The air felt still, like the whole street was holding its breath. I woke up early, not because I was excited or anxious, but because I couldn't stay asleep. I'd barely managed 3 hours. My mind was a spinning reel, everything I'd found, everything I hadn't said, and everything I still didn't know how to feel. I didn't shower. I didn't shave. I didn't eat. I just sat in the armchair by the window like a scarecrow in a cardigan, holding her signed divorce papers in one hand and my untouched coffee in the other. I watched every car that passed. I waited for her headlights like they were a storm front. She texted me at 10:46 a.m. On my way. I'll be quick. No punctuation. No greeting. No acknowledgement of the silence between us. Just a cold logistics update. I didn't reply. When she pulled up, she parked the car like she was arriving at a stranger's house. She didn't even glance at the windows. Just grabbed a tote bag and walked up the front steps with that same gait I used to love, casual, focused, always a little too fast. I opened the door before she could knock. We stood face to face. And for a second, something flickered in her eyes. Not guilt. Not regret. Just discomfort. Like I was making it harder than it needed to be by still existing. "Hey," she said, glancing past me. "I'll just grab a few things from the closet and go." She stepped inside like it was still her home. Her keys jingled in her hand. She walked through the hall like nothing was broken, like no fault lines were splitting under every floorboard. I followed her. Quietly. She opened the closet, pulled out a few jackets, one pair of shoes, and that beige overnight bag she always took on her work trips. She wasn't in a hurry, but she wasn't wasting time either. It was choreographed. Efficient. Like moving out of a hotel room. "You don't want to talk?" I asked, finally. She paused. Half-turned. "About what?" I tilted my head. About what happened. About what's still happening. About Dustin. There it was, the name, hanging in the air like a cough you try to suppress. Her expression hardened just slightly. "I told you, Owen, this doesn't have to be messy. We're grown-ups. Things just ended." "Ended?" I repeated. "You mean the marriage? Or just the part where you were pretending?" That got her. A small twitch in her jaw. Her eyes shifted, not toward me, but away. Toward the floor. The bag. The door. Anywhere else. "I didn't come here for a fight," she said, voice clipped. "You've clearly been digging. And I'm sorry if that hurts, but it's done. It's over. I didn't cheat on you. I moved on." I let that hang for a second. Then I walked past her and picked up the folder from the table. I handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. I said nothing. She opened it. Slowly. Her fingers froze on the second page. A photo of her and Dustin at that cafe on Oak Ridge. Her hand in his. Both smiling like the world owed them nothing but sunshine. Behind that, screenshots of their messages. Her emails. The booking confirmations. The receipts. The necklace. The gas station charge in Colorado, the same weekend she told me she was at her cousin's lake house for a wellness retreat. She looked up at me, finally. Her face wasn't flushed or tearful. It was pale. Like all the blood had moved to her feet. Like she suddenly realized the ground was cold and she wasn't wearing shoes. "You've been watching us?" I shrugged. "I've been watching you. I didn't know he existed until 3 days ago." She said nothing. Her mouth opened, then closed again. The bag slipped slightly from her hand. A second later, she picked it back up, like the weight of the lies had finally settled in. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said quietly. I laughed. It wasn't cruel. It was tired. Hollow. "Then why did you tie the divorce to a ribbon like it was a joke? Why did you send me champagne with a note that said cheers to freedom while you were busy booking flights with another man?" She blinked. "I didn't think you'd react this way. You thought I'd just sign and disappear. I thought you'd be relieved." I shook my head. "No. You thought I'd stay silent." Then I walked over to the hallway drawer, pulled out a second envelope, and held it up. She didn't move. "This is a copy of everything," I said. "Every message, every timestamp, every photo. I haven't sent it anywhere. Yet." Her expression shifted again. Not panic, calculation. The way you watch someone do math in their head when they suddenly realize there's more on the table than they bargained for. "I'm not going to ruin your life," I continued. "I'm not going to call your mother. I'm not even going to tell your friends. But I'm not going to lie for you either. You don't get to rewrite this." She reached for the envelope. I pulled it back. "No," I said. "You don't get this one." She looked at me differently then. Not with hate. Not even with anger. But with fear. Because for the first time in a very long time, she realized I wasn't the man she had scripted. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't harmless. And I wasn't done. After she left, the house felt heavier than it ever had. Like her silence was still trapped between the walls. echoing louder than any door slam could. The folder with the evidence sat untouched on the kitchen counter where I'd left it, her fingerprints still faintly pressed into the edge. She hadn't taken anything else with her. Not the framed photo from Paris. Not the mug she always used in the mornings. Not even the jacket she used to joke made her look like a rich art dealer. Just that overnight bag, stuffed with a few things and shame she was trying not to wear on her face. And then there was the second envelope, the one I hadn't opened yet. I had printed it the night before, sealed it, left it untouched on purpose. I didn't even fully remember what I'd put inside. It wasn't meant for her. It was meant for me. Something in me needed to know if I had the strength to face my own truth, the way I was demanding she face hers. So I sat down on the edge of the bed, peeled the flap open, and unfolded the first page. It was a letter I'd written to myself 2 years ago, back when things first started to go numb. I didn't remember writing it, but the words were unmistakably mine. Messy, hurried, emotional. It read, "If you're reading this, it means you still haven't said it out loud, that something's wrong, that she's gone already, and you're just pretending you're still enough. You're not a coward. You just keep trying to fix things that are already broken. Stop bleeding for people who hand you the knife." I stared at that last sentence for a long time. I don't even remember what triggered me to write it back then. Maybe it was the night she forgot our anniversary and blamed her calendar app. Maybe it was the week she left town without telling me and came back with a tan and a weird new laugh. Or maybe it was just the million little things I swallowed without chewing, hoping things would taste better if I just didn't bite back. Below the letter were screenshots I had taken long before Dustin ever existed, or at least before I knew he did. Her messages to a coworker about me being emotionally bland. Her response to someone's comment about marriage being an outdated idea with a laughing emoji. A saved draft of a message titled, "What I Wish I Could Say to Him," which I had found in her notes app a year ago and never confronted her about. That second envelope wasn't just proof of betrayal. It was proof that I had known, deep down, that she'd been pulling away for years. I just didn't want to accept it. Because I thought love was something you could hold together with effort. Because I thought being kind and loyal and showing up every day meant something. But to her, it didn't. Not anymore. And so, for the first time, I stopped blaming just her. I started blaming me for letting it get this far, for letting myself shrink, for not asking the questions I was afraid to hear answered. I spent the rest of the day cleaning the house. Not like I was waiting for someone. Not like I had a plan. Just cleaning. Every drawer, every shelf, every cabinet. I threw out the leftovers in the fridge that she liked. I donated the books she never read but bought to look interesting. I stripped the bed and changed the sheets. The only thing I left untouched was the dining room table, where the divorce papers and the envelopes still sat, like artifacts of a life that just crumbled in slow motion. Then, around 9:30 that night, something strange happened. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. No name. Just a single text. "You didn't have to humiliate her like that." I stared at the screen for a full minute before responding. "Who is this?" No answer. Then, 30 seconds later. "You made your point. Now let her go." I didn't reply after that. I didn't have to, because I already knew who it was. It was him. Dustin. The guy who drinks smoothies and signs his emails Cheers. The guy who thought he could replace me and never be seen. He knew now that I had eyes. That I had proof. That I hadn't burned in the fire. I'd walked out of it holding a ledger. I didn't threaten him. I didn't say I'd expose him. But I knew something he didn't. This wasn't just about what I could do. It was about what she told him I wouldn't. And that trust, the one thing they built their fantasy on, was already cracking. Because now he was texting me in the dark. Because now he was the one wondering what I'd do next. I didn't sleep again after Dustin's message. It played in my head all night like a broken record. You didn't have to humiliate her like that. Humiliate? That's what they called it? After what she did? After the ribbon and the hotel weekends and the handwritten cheers to freedom? I'd barely said 10 words to her since it happened, and that silence was apparently too loud for them. The next morning, I checked my email. Not my regular account, the old one. The one I used for newsletters I never read and spam I never unsubscribed from. That's where she finally reached me. Subject, please. Just talk to me. No body text. Just that. No apology. No explanation. Just a 5-word cry from a woman who used to plan speeches about everything, even where to hang pictures. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted power. I just had nothing left to say that wouldn't come out sounding like a man yelling into an empty canyon. So instead, I went about my day. Grocery store. Laundry. The basics. But something felt off. A quiet kind of unease, like I'd opened a door I wasn't supposed to. That night, it got worse. Around 8:15 p.m., while I was watching a documentary I wasn't really following, my phone buzzed again. Not a text, a call. No contact name, but I recognized the area code. I let it ring. Then again. Then a third time. On the fourth, I picked up. I didn't speak. I just listened. At first, there was silence. Then soft static. Then a voice, her voice. I know you're there. Still, I didn't say anything. Then she whispered, he's losing it. Owen, I think you did something to him. I blinked. Sat up. My heart kicked once, hard. I didn't say anything, I said flatly. She sounded panicked, but muffled, like she was hiding. He thinks I lied about everything. About when it started. About what I told you. He found the email folder. I don't even know how. I think he thinks I gave it to you. Now I was fully upright. You didn't, I said. I know that, she hissed. But he doesn't. And that's when it hit me, she hadn't told him I knew everything. She hadn't admitted what I showed her. She walked back into his arms pretending it was fine. Pretending I was still blind. And now, he had proof that I'd seen it all. And he thought she handed it over. I told you I wasn't going to ruin you, I said quietly. You didn't, she said. But he's unraveling. He said he wants to go to war with your silence. I don't even know what that means. I did. It meant Dustin, the man who called me emotionally lazy, was finally realizing how it feels when someone looks right at you and says nothing. And for a man like him, someone who thrives on reaction, validation, movement, silence is more terrifying than rage. I just want this to stop, she said. Please. You mean the consequences? I asked. She didn't answer. Not right away. Then, softer than I'd ever heard her speak, he says I wrecked us both. I stared at the dark TV screen in front of me, my reflection faint in the black glass. He's not wrong, I said. But you handed him the match. Then I hung up. I sat there in that quiet, dim room for a long time. And somewhere around midnight, I opened the folder again. Not the evidence one. The other one. The letter I wrote. The files I saved from years back. All the things I swallowed in silence for years before Dustin even existed. And it became clear. I'd spent so long trying to be tolerable, agreeable, easy to live with, that I'd made myself invisible. And now, for the first time, I was visible again, not because I changed, but because I stopped shielding them from the consequences of who they were. That night, I emailed Dustin. Just 3 words. Nothing more. She didn't lie. 10 minutes later, he called. After I sent that final message to Dustin, she didn't lie. I turned off my phone. Not on silent. Not on airplane mode. Off. For the first time in years, I didn't feel tethered to it. I left it on the nightstand and went to sleep. A deep, dreamless sleep. No spiraling thoughts. No blinking at the ceiling. Just stillness. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not because I was anxious, but because something inside me felt done. Like some thread had finally snapped, not violently, but clean, quiet. And it didn't hurt. I got dressed. Packed a small bag. Nothing dramatic. Just enough for a few nights. My toothbrush. A couple shirts. The book I'd started 3 years ago and never finished. I left the house exactly as it was. No notes. No final letters. I took the giraffe-shaped flash drive and left everything else. I didn't have to make noise to move on. I just had to go. When I stepped outside, the sky was pale and soft. The kind of morning where the world feels reset. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove. I didn't even use GPS. I just kept heading out of town, past the places I used to take her, past the old coffee shop we stopped going to, past the co-working space where she first met him. I didn't feel the sting I expected. Just air. Space. Possibility. Somewhere near the lake, I stopped at a diner. A quiet place with chipped mugs and dusty blinds. The waitress was older, kind, didn't ask questions when I ordered 2 coffees and a slice of apple pie. I opened my notebook, the one I hadn't touched in years, and started writing again. But not about her. Not about him. About me. Things I wanted. Places I'd stopped dreaming about. I wrote about how I missed walking through cities I'd never been to. How I wanted to take a photography class. How I used to love cooking until meals turned into transactions. How I miss sitting in silence and not feeling small in it. At some point, the waitress refilled my coffee. She asked if I wanted anything else. I told her no. I was good. And I meant it. 3 days later, I sold the house. Quietly. Cleanly. No drama. I didn't tell Clarabelle until the paperwork was signed. I wired her portion of the equity and left a simple message. This chapter is closed. You don't have to worry. I won't speak of you again. I don't need to. She replied only once. You were better to me than I deserved. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because it wasn't about proving her wrong anymore. It wasn't about proving anything to Dustin. It was about finally choosing myself. About realizing that peace wasn't going to show up at my door wrapped in a ribbon. I had to go find it. On my own. With nothing but the truth and the man I'd buried under compromise. Now, months later, I wake up in a smaller apartment. Quiet street. I take walks every morning, drink real coffee, and talk to people who know nothing about her, and never will. I go to the bookstore on Thursdays, and I'm learning to cook for one again without sadness attached to it. I even finished that old novel I never thought I'd get through. I don't feel pathetic anymore. I feel free. Because in the end, she gave me something far better than what she intended. Not divorce. Not pain. Not humiliation. She gave me the permission I was too scared to give myself. To start over.